So this is my mental health story and how it affected me during lockdown and where I'm kind of with it now. So I thought I'd talk about this because it might help anyone else that might have been feeling that their mental health was suffered through the lockdown. So I'll just tell you a bit about my story. So let's go back to 2020, pre-COVID era, which just seems so far away now, over a year on. But just to tell you kind of what my situation was, I started university doing my postgraduate degree in creative writing, and I was feeling quite nervous about this, sort of going into that new environment, not knowing anyone, not knowing how it was going to work, going to like a completely different field of study to what I did before I did English. Creative writing, something that I've never done like really properly. So I did have Impostor Syndrome for quite a while. And I had the first day and I was just so nervous, and I just found it really hard to speak to anyone. And on the first day they would have like these like induction lessons, just tell everyone what the course is about, what's coming up, and you kind of meet the people that you're going to be doing the course with, and that just really out of my comfort zone, and my immediate response was just to flee. And I left at break time. I think everyone else kind of hung around and maybe had a bit of a chat, but I was like, no, I'm out of here. And I went into town, into one of my favourite places, the Superdrug, and I was just thought, well, I'll just buy a bit of makeup and then that will make me feel a bit better, that will sort of calm me, and then by the time I've done that, I'll get back, and then they'll be on the next stage of the induction, where we get to go into our smaller groups, and then I can just sort of get it over with. So that's what I did. I went back, and then we had to go around and do that thing of introducing, this is my name and this is what I've done, this is why I'm writing, everything like that. And again, that just terrified me. I got like butterflies in my stomach, and I just thought, I really don't like this and I just want to get it over with. So yeah, very nerve-wracking experience, probably more so than other people might find it. So I got that out of the way, and then at the end they were kind of like, we have a like refreshments afterwards, just to like sort of socialise with the rest of the like department. And again, my first instinct was just, no, go home, go back home, and just you've done what you need to do, and just leave it. But again, I just had to fight those kind of uncomfortable feeling and that anxiousness, and just go to the mixer thing and just try and talk to people. And I did manage to do that. And yeah, it went okay. And yeah, we just started talking about writing and books, and yeah, it was fine. So I did feel better after doing that. But again, still feeling quite, I'm meant to be here, everyone seems so much better than me. And that feeling did kind of hang around for a while until I sort of got into it and realised that I'm actually good at it as well. And then it just so happened that first week that I started, I had a bereavement. My family, my granddad passed away, which was kind of expected because he was he was old, he was in a care home, and he was kind of deteriorating, but just hearing that, it did kind of, I did cry, just because I was quite close to my grandma and granddad. So kind of having that happen at the same time as like this transition of going from work into uni, and that kind of event impacted me in ways that I didn't expect. So I would have nights where I really struggled to fall asleep. There was one night I didn't sleep at all. I was on the phone to 111, I'd already taken some sleeping tablets, and I just had to check whether I should take any more or whether that would have been quite dangerous. And in the end I just had to just sort of stay awake until the next morning, go about my day on like no sleep, but luckily I didn't have that much to do. And then that was that part of it, and that's part of my depression is changes in sleep. But some of these things are obviously to do with the bereavement. Another thing that happened is that my appetite changed, so I'm usually quite eat regularly, enjoy food, but at that time I just wasn't feeling hungry anymore, and even when I thought about eating, I would just feel sick, so I couldn't even bring the food to my mouth to eat it because I was already rejecting it. So it became that I wasn't hungry, I was skipping a lot of meals, and I just knew that something wasn't quite right. So they're like the two major changes that happened. That's part of my depression, and that carried on for a couple of months, but at the same time I was doing quite well at uni. I was like making friends, my writing was going well, so that I think was kind of a positive things to kind of distract from the depressive symptoms and feelings that I was having. And then I think it got to Christmas, of 2019. Actually, yeah, it does feel a bit of a blur actually. It's kind of hard to remember everything from 2 years ago. But another thing that does form part of the depression is memory loss. So this happens when I might be speaking to someone, I would know what I'm going to say in my head, and then by the time it comes to my time of the conversation, I will forget what I was going to say. So just kind of that feeling of if something is on the tip of your tongue what you want to say, but you just lose it and you just can't get it back, and it's really frustrating. But yeah, that's part of it, like forgetting things in conversations, maybe knowing that you're about to do something and forgetting what you're meant to do. So it's just easier for me to think, okay, the next major thing's probably the lockdown, and that sort of came whilst I was 3/4 through my first year of uni. I was meant to finish the degree in 1 year, but because of how I was feeling and the bereavement, I extended it to do it part-time and over 2 years. So I was kind of halfway through the degree when they had the lockdown, and because they had strikes during the year, we were sort of about to go back after the strike, but we didn't actually get to go back because they called the lockdown. So kind of like an interruption. No one knew what was going to happen, and it was just kind of like I just thought, well, I've got an assignment to do, get on with that and just worry about everything later, which I did. I handed in the assignment, finished that year, and just kind of, okay, well, am I going to go back next year? No one knew what was going to happen, and I think from just sort of having that focus on the assignment, and then afterwards just like, okay, well, there's so much that we can all do now because we've got this sort of pause on life, like aside from obviously like the health worries about people getting ill and dying, those that are not in that kind of immediate danger, we can sort of take a pause for thought and make the most of this time. And I sort of went into, I guess, like productivity frenzy, and I remember I did like a blog post about how to stay positive in these times and how I can make the most of it, but later on in the year, I couldn't even take my own advice. I was just like, this is terrible and everything seems hopeless. And I think I was kind of in denial at that beginning stage of the pandemic, that this is just temporary, and that we can push through. And I was kind of had that hope and that drive right at the beginning, and it just didn't last. Things just seemed to be getting worse, and I think because I was already in quite a bad place mentally, it just made it get worse. But I didn't really know this was happening. I would just think, oh, well, I'm quite lucky because I've still got somewhere to live. None of my family are ill. So I didn't really think, well, maybe I'm still depressed and this pandemic is just making it worse. And I also, I did have kind of a feeling, because I did a assessment test on depressive symptoms, and it did say that I was scoring quite highly on depression, but I just didn't do anything about it. I just thought, well, people are suffering. NHS is probably has people that needs the services more urgently than I do, so it just stopped me from seeking help. And I just sort of let it go on for a couple more months before I did anything about it, before I even talked to my doctor about it. And also during this time of the announcement of the pandemic, I had started a new job in January, and because it was part of the hospitality industry, they had to close whilst we were in lockdown, and they did not manage to reopen, and I was made redundant sort of over the summer. I didn't really get confirmation until about September time, so I kind of had a feeling that I might not have a job to go back to, so I was kind of making applications and seeing if I could get something else in the meantime, but nothing really came up until about September. I had an interview for a similar sort of job, like a hospitality job, and luckily I managed to be successful at the interview, and I started that job in, I think, end of September of 2020. So yeah, around that time I was starting the new job, back to uni for second year, but this time it would be COVID uni, which we didn't know what that was going to be like, and sort of that whole meeting new people again, because all of my class had graduated, so I had to go through that process again of meeting new people, but under really weird circumstances, and I think I got over that fear that I had in the first year, and I was quite hopeful and optimistic that it was going to be better than I anticipated, and I think I was a bit disappointed, just because of how different it was. I didn't realise how different it would be, and we had kind of 2 in-person classes, and after that it was kind of, okay, it's all going to be online now, and I realised that I like the sort of routine of leaving my house, travelling to uni, like I have to get the train, having that little walk and being in a different environment. That was all part of the experience for me, which I could not get whilst I was at home, sort of in the same environment trying to study, and having those distinctions, I think, did help me to separate work, like uni work, from everything else, and that kind of being indoors, having that, there's no distinction between anything, so it's really not motivating. So yeah, things were not the best, and I didn't have time for I didn't sort of realise that I needed time to relax and time that was for things that did make me feel good. I was just sort of on the cycle of, okay, I need to make sure I've done my work for uni, like the weekly work, then I've got to make sure that I'm going to my job and working hard there as well. So yeah, I just kind of been on this hamster wheel, and that led to me burning out and being really, really, really depressed. And yeah, just sort of acknowledging, okay, there's something wrong here and I do need help now. And that's sort of the start of a very long process of trying to get better, and not knowing what's going to help, because when I'd been depressed in the past, things that I had done that weren't working this time, or maybe they weren't available because we were in lockdown. So yeah, a very long, not straightforward I guess like journey. And that would sort of begin with talking to my doctor, because I was on antidepressants all up until that time anyway, and we had to kind of decide whether I needed to change that, so I increased my dosage of that a couple of times, and when that still had no effect, then it was kind of suggested that because my body had got used to that that antidepressant, it wasn't effective anymore. And yeah, so changing the antidepressant I was on, just giving that a try. So I did that, but the one that I was changed to had quite obvious side effects. So I would take it at night time and it would help me fall asleep, but then in the morning I would really struggle to wake up. I would feel still really drowsy. I would have no energy to be like, okay, you're awake now, you need to be doing stuff in the day, and I'd still feel like I was half asleep, and it did feel a bit dangerous, because I was working in a kitchen, and if I sort of like when my reactions were quite slow, so I was just worried that would have would lead to like a physical accident, and just sort of not feeling alert, and also just worried how like other people can't really see what it's like when you're depressed. They might not be able to tell, because I'm very good at acting as if everything is okay and not really just trying to sort of power through. So there was kind of that worry about, okay, I'm not my complete self, and the medication is doing things to me that's quite unpredictable. So that was sort of one strand of treatment. Another one was just sort of talking to like mental health teams at uni. They had a service that you can book in and you can speak to someone about what you're going through. So I used that a couple of times. The only downside of that was that you would get a different person every time, most of the time. So you kind of have to start from scratch, like what sort of led you to contact them and your situation. And I felt that I was spending a lot of the time just going over what had already happened, so that it kind of, you weren't having that consistency. And I think that's what I needed, was just someone like I could check in with sort of every week, and just would know from start to finish, or not finish because it's not it's not finished, but just to have that bit of consistency. That's what I needed, really. But that was quite hard to get at the time, because a lot of people are needing the counselling services through like my uni. I know there's students that were like isolating in halls and going through some really distressing times, maybe away from home for the first time, and I felt really sorry for them, to be sort of going through that with very little support. So I know that they would have been reaching out to the counselling services, and same with the NHS, and they're already stretched, and people that are probably going through bereavement because of COVID, or maybe caring for someone because of COVID. So I think their resources for therapy, counselling, very stretched, and waiting lists very long, and they're really long before anyway. So now they were just kind of, the waiting time was extra long, and it was just a kind of, okay, I'll put your name down for this, and we'll be in contact when someone's available. And kind of had it back in my mind that it's not going to be soon, but just sort of, I know that I will feel better when I do get to be seen, and that would just sort of, that waiting would just carry on for a couple of months before anyone would get to see me, and in that time I just sort of was feeling worse and worse. Things would happen that would just make the situation just seem kind of hopeless, and I was just really struggling each day to carry on, and feel and just